Whether in an organization or a family, culture is made up of automatic, repetitive habits and emotional responses. And one of the most common ways that we do that is through traditions, rituals, and rites of passage. So today I'm here with Noelle Rhodes and Elise Daly Parker to talk about those. We're going to put them under the umbrella of family traditions. We're going to talk about why they matter and how we can create some of our own. But before we get started, I'd love for you guys to share your recommendations, something that you are loving right now.
I will go first. So I was hanging out with a new friend named Ginger in Arizona. We did an event together, and she told me about an app that I think has been around for a while called Pause. Pause. It's by John Eldridge.
I just heard about that.
And
where did I hear?
because my friend Ginger, who's awesome, is becoming a spiritual director, and she was telling me about this amazing app, and I've been using it. And it's awesome, and it's free 99. So basically, it's just an opportunity for you to take a little bit of time out each day. I think it starts with 1 minute. You pause for 1 minute, and then he kind of talks you through just sort of a thought, like a scriptural meditative thought. And just for 1 minute, you do it. And so I'm up to 3 minutes, which is pretty impressive for me. But it's really good. I feel like it's just I'm not huge into meditation, but I like this as a practice. I don't like to clear my mind because God knows what's going to jump in there, knowing me. But I do like that it gives me something, that's strengthening and encouraging and scriptural to kind of think on. So it's called Pause, and it's a little white app with like 2 black lines going down like a pause button, because there's a few pauses in the app store. So you just need to kind of make sure you're clicking the right one.
Yeah, I've been doing that for a while. Chris and I were doing it a little bit before we went to bed for a couple of weeks. Just listening to, I think you could do 1, 3, or 5 minutes.
Yep.
You can choose it. But mine was free.
Yeah, it's free.
Oh, I thought you said $3.99. Yeah.
No, free 99.
There are, you can pay and get
you can get some extras,
yeah.
But I think it actually goes up to 10 minutes for free.
Does it?
I think so. Yeah.
We got as far as 5, but it's good. And it gives you reminders.
Yes. And I think what I like about it is you can't do the 10-minute one until you've done the 1 minute, 3 minute, and 5 minute ones. So it's supposed to train you to be able to
train your mind. It's good.
It's cool. I like it.
Who the heck does not need a pause?
I don't know.
Nobody.
I need it.
My answer is nobody.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you what I love?
Yep.
It's a simple little thing, but I really love it. Kind Thins. I love these little bars. This one is peanut butter, dark chocolate. And I'm often running off to physical therapy in the morning, and I just don't have time to get myself together. And this keeps me going. And they're delicious. They're like a treat. I can't see the calories on them, let me say. But low calorie, good for you stuff. Not a lot of junk in there. Gluten-free, no genetically engineered ingredients, that kind of stuff. But I can't see the calories on it. Oh, 100 calories. There you go.
100 calories isn't too bad.
No.
No, that really does. Great.
Yeah, it keeps me going till lunchtime if I'm going to be out, have my physical therapy, and then kind of, do my things running around a little bit. So it's good.
Well, that is good. Okay, so I'm going to do a makeup recommendation. I'm not a huge makeup person, but I actually won a whole bunch of Bobbi Brown makeup a little while back, well, maybe like 2-3 years ago, at a party, at a fundraiser. I remember it was like the last shindig before everything shut down. And it was like one of those, tricky trays, auction things. And it's these shimmer bricks. So I had to look it up. They don't actually have, like, mine has 3 in it. And what it is like, it's blush or bronzer. And I think I'm going to get the terms right. I did look it up to see, so I could share it with you, but it's like all these different colors. So what happens is when you put your brush on it and you put it on your face, it gives you those shades of contour so that you don't have to contour. So it's a real quick way. Like if you just keep your brush in the same way and you put it on, the lightest, like whitest is up top, and then it gets dark, dark, dark as it goes down. And then it sort of gives you a little bit of like, it's like, doing the highlighter and the blush, it's like it eliminates all those steps. And for a busy mom, especially for me in the summer, that just wants a little bit of color on my face, but doesn't want to spend the time applying like contour and, which I don't really do often anyways. It just makes life pretty easy. And I've gotten compliments on it. I've had people notice, like my mom's noticed, she's like, oh, did you use this color up here and this color down there? And
wow.
so,
Nice.
I'd love to try that.
Yeah, I like Bobbi Brown. I
Yeah.
use Bobbi Brown primer, and it's made of unicorn tears. I swear, it's really good.
Do you use it on your whole face or like an eye?
No, I use it's like
can't speak.
It's like a primer for your face, just to cover
Nice.
a multitude of sins. It's good.
Give you that little smooth thing to start with.
So how is a primer different than like foundation or cover up?
It goes underneath your foundation.
Okay.
And it like has, I think good things in it for your skin. It's supposed to protect your skin from the foundation.
I use Thrive Cosmetics. Do you guys know those? I like them. They're supposed to be pretty good ingredients. That's something I'm newly concerned about. What is in my makeup? What kinds of things that are really bad for us, including carcinogens here in the United States. They do allow those.
Wonderful.
I found that out, especially about my hair products. So that's been a bit of a bummer. Wonderful. After using the same thing for 20 years. Good news.
And on that note,
we're going to move on to family traditions.
You can cut that out.
Maybe we could do a whole episode on our cosmetics and how to eliminate this stuff. I know there's a lot of stuff that I'd like to eliminate. I'm grateful for everybody else that's doing the work to figure that out for me.
Yes. It takes a lot of effort.
All right, so let's move on to family traditions. Now, I'm pretty sure most of us know what a family tradition is, but I'm just going to go ahead and read the definition. A family tradition is an activity or pattern of behavior that reflects a family's values, interests, or beliefs. And once established, they are often passed down through generations. So I am sure many of us have family traditions. So ladies, what comes to mind when you hear that? Family traditions.
Fun, togetherness, connectedness, a break, an opportunity to regroup. So many good things. I love family traditions.
Mm-hmm.
I think of like something you can always count on happening with the same people kind of at the same time.
Yeah. I can remember growing up, we had this tradition of going to my cousin's house every Christmas Eve. So I would say pretty much growing up, almost every Christmas was at my grandparents' house. And then Christmas Eve, we would go to my cousin's house. And I just remember the anticipation of it, like looking forward to it. It was the one time a year when I got to see all of my cool cousins. And of course, plenty of family members that had no idea who they were that would come up and kiss me and hug me. The older generation. My experiences with family traditions was very multi-generational. Like, it was like my great grandparents were there. And just, I would even remember driving to my cousin's house. They had this big star on the top of the house, and you could see it from the highway or the busy road before you turned on to their area. And it was just the excitement leading up to knowing that that's where we were going to be, and we would see that star every year, and we would go and hang out in their cool basement every year. And that was just, I just think of the anticipation, like you said, Noelle, it's just something that I could count on every year, even when there are plenty of other things I couldn't count on.
True that.
So I think we already mentioned this idea of having something that you can count on, but family traditions provide comfort and security. Like you said, they give, Elise, they give family a reason to get together. They create a sense of belonging. And then it also is an incredible way to pass down our cultural and religious traditions. And so I think immediately of Christmas. Christmas was the only time I went to more of a charismatic church growing up, and we would go to my grandparents' church, which was more liturgical, and we would sing the hymns and we would hold the candles, and just even experiencing that in contrast to my typical church experience was just such a blessing and something that I remember for sure.
Yeah.
So why don't you give me guys some examples of your family traditions that you've loved, maybe some that were passed down, and then maybe we can talk about some that we've actually started ourselves.
Well, we were a big holiday growing up. Holidays were just family events. And just as you say, Kimberly, generations, we'd go out to Queens. And then as we got older, my mother was a host, or my aunt, Patty, was a host, depending on the year. But I mean, it was just together. And I think about my cousins and I, we had 5 kids, they had 4 kids. And we would just run around. Like I'm picturing us being up in the attic. There was some kind of fun space up there, and we would just have a ball all day into the night until our parents, threw us into the car and then brought us home and put us to bed. And that really was pretty much every holiday. My mother was big on every holiday. We did celebrate like Valentine's Day and St. Patrick's Day and Christmas and New Year's, and there was always a reason to celebrate, which is an interesting thing because my mother was generally not that happy a person, but I think holidays really lifted her spirits. So we did that. And then certainly that was passed on into my family, raising my children with my sister's children's, we had a big mob of people, and that we really did get together. Most of the time we had to start to navigate that a little differently with spouses and doing every other year kinds of things. But very, very much what you said, anticipation, could count on it. One of my favorite traditions, and I can't remember if I talked about this, but one that we started, my sisters and I, is braless game day.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, maybe on our old podcast. Yes.
Okay. It's the day after Christmas when we were just so tired, we would go to one another's houses with nursing babies, if that was the case at the time. Eventually the husbands would take care of the kids and the moms would get together. And now it's the moms and their daughters. So it's really fun. It's a really kind of sacred tradition. We eat and play games and have a ball in our pajamas.
With no bras.
With no bras. My son-in-law named it that when he was lucky or unlucky enough to be there and not really have anywhere to go. And his wife was with us, Lauren, my daughter. And he named it. We thought it was hysterical. So we've called it that. And we do believe it should be a national holiday.
It should be.
I like that.
Everything else is.
Why not? I could see the cards at Target. Happy braless game day.
Seriously. Okay, Noelle, you're on.
I think for me, traditions growing up were always surrounded or centered on food, to be honest with you. A weekly tradition was every Sunday morning we got bagels because we live in Jersey and we're religious by our bagels.
Yes. And
we'd get, fresh, hot, warm bagels, and we would eat them, and you would never eat them on Monday because they'd be stale by then, or because we've eaten them all. So I really always liked that, and it sort of kind of created like a rhythm to the week. So I always enjoyed that, and I continued that tradition as long as I lived in New Jersey. We lived in other places like Northern Ireland, so we didn't partake in their bagels. They were not as good, but we supplemented with other things like a scone or something like that. But growing up too, like I remember, and this is funny because I remember like Thanksgiving, we would, I grew up in an Italian American family. So we would like, we'd have like your typical turkey, and the fixings meal, but we always had other things. So like our first course was always a really large antipasto, or I guess charcuterie would be either way you could say,
depending on where you're from.
And my uncle would go to some deli in Hoboken and stand outside for hours. I don't even know which one it was. Can't remember the name of it, but, and he would get all the meats, all the cheeses. My grandmother would have the olives and the bread, and my mom would have some vegetables. Like everybody kind of brought for it, and you would eat that for like the first hour.
Yeah.
And and then we would have maybe a salad. It would be the next course, and then we'd have like, I don't know, ziti or something.
Homemade manigot.
Yeah, something like that. And then you'd have the turkey, right?
Yeah.
So my first Thanksgiving with my husband, I spent it with his family, and I was
Where's the food?
surprised to learn that not
I
everybody
can
does this.
totally relate. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember going to the house, and my mother, I mean, they actually shot their own turkey. So it was like I have respect for that. I mean, they shot it, they defeathered it, they cooked it, whatever.
That's fresh.
But I remember like they ate at 11 a.m.
Oh no.
And everything went on the table. So it was like there was no courses, like the turkey, the fixings, and the dessert were all on one table, and everybody just ate from that table starting at 11 a.m.
Like kind of cruising around the table whenever. Yeah.
And like Thanksgiving was over before, like, I don't know, 2 or 3. It was kind of that's not something I was used to. And I remember like going into like the bedroom that we were staying in at my mother-in-law and father-in-law's house, and like calling my mom, and she's like, we just finished with our antipasto. And I was like sad. Like Thanksgiving did not feel like Thanksgiving to me, which is funny because it's not really a Thanksgiving thing to do, but that's just what my tradition was.
Noelle, you know, so you girls both married Italian men. I did not, but
No, Troy's not Italian.
Oh, that's right. I don't mean that. I mean, I'm
Italian.
Kimberly married an Italian guy. That's why you said I totally relate. And you, Noelle, are the Italian. I know that. Sorry. And then I was called Medagon by all my friends because I was the only Irish American among all Italian Americans. And I went to my friend Mary Ellen Testa's Thanksgiving one year because my parents went to Cape Cod and I stayed home. And exactly what you're describing, I was literally sitting at this table going, oh my gosh, the turkey was a side dish.
Yeah.
It was like what they prepared was stuffed mushrooms and menegot, homemade, like pasta. Like it was incredible. So after that, our Thanksgivings paled.
I mean, I think the turkey is more of a centerpiece than anything else. It's not
like a cake on the table.
Yeah, it's just a centerpiece. It's not like, you don't actually eat it. It's just you got to have it there.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, those things, definitely food is very traditional for my family. And I would say those food traditions, those are things I'm passing down to my kids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I was thinking we could go 2 different directions. One, the food thing. So we had turkey every Thanksgiving and every Christmas. And when I got married to my husband, Christmas was like, they didn't do turkey for Christmas because we just ate it in November. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so many other meals. You eat 1 to 3 times a month and you can't have turkey 2 times in a year. Like I was so offended. And so
why would you do that? You have ham or something else.
Yeah, we have ham and roast beef.
It was the 2 times a year we had turkey, and maybe there was like a ham on the side. And well, we did the I
know many people do. Many people do that. But
that's very British. They do turkey both. Well, they don't have Thanksgiving, but they will do a turkey on Christmas Day.
Yeah.
And they'll do another turkey on Boxing Day, which is the day after. And I feel like that's a little bit.
Oh yeah.
That's insanity, but whatever.
So my husband's family doesn't typically do like Italian meals like you guys are describing actually. Mm-hmm. But I also like I had to really like let go of the disappointment, of like, oh, what is this buffet style? No, it's Christmas. You sit down at a table, you have like the nice silverware. Now we're going to do, but like all of those little things have tripped me up in the past. And I've been like really disappointed, like, wanting to go into the bedroom and cry and tell my mom, I want to come home. But also like, I remember like, maybe it was my first or second Thanksgiving. They would slice the turkey, serve the white meat and throw out the dark meat. And I was like, that is my favorite. Like they changed because I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't even want
turkey leg is mine.
Yes. So, so that could bring us in another direction too. Like, what do you do when you're now marrying traditions?
Oh yeah.
And you have to adjust to what your spouse has always done. And how do you figure that out? Have you guys had to deal with that where you've had to come to some sort of agreement? Do you acquiesce or do you create something new? What have you guys done with some of your traditions?
So for me, it wouldn't be so much the holidays because I started hostessing Christmas very early on, and everybody was pretty much invited. So if you didn't come, you did your own thing. You know what I mean? Like there was no pressure to show up at my mother-in-law's because really she sold her home, you know, not that soon after we married. But anyway, so we took over the tradition of cooking all those meals. But vacations were a biggie for us.
Yeah.
We were a Cape Cod family since I was literally born. I mean, my mother was on the beach with me, pregnant at Cape Cod, pregnant with me at Cape Cod. So that was just like in my blood. And when it came time to vacation with our family, I was like, well, we're going to Cape Cod. And my husband was like, I don't want to go to Cape Cod. Cape Cod is like your family reunion when you've all been together all year anyway, which is true. All the Daly sisters would come with their families up to Cape Cod as if we hadn't seen each other 2 weeks before. But in addition to that, we had old friends up at the Cape because we did grow up there. And we loved seeing, years ago, it was many different families. Now it's really kind of a Daly Hanlon reunion. And, but again, my husband was like, I don't want to go to Cape Cod. I was so outraged and heartbroken, combine the two to the emotional picture of where I was. And we really had to work this through. Like, I'm not kidding. I'm sure we talked about this in counseling. And because I was just like, there's certain things where we just go, well, that's just the way it is. We just go to Cape Cod. I want my kids to go to Cape Cod.
Right.
What we worked out though was we do go to Cape Cod most Labor Day weekends. Still, my kids come or not, depending on where they are in life. And it's just become, well, that's what we do on Labor Day weekend, and that's okay. But we established a new place to go for vacation for many years as a family, and that was Maine. So that became our own family tradition, and it was beautiful and wonderful. And I'm really glad my husband did insist on us coming up with something of our own. So
yeah, that's cool.
That's good. I forgot about vacations in terms of falling under this umbrella, but you're right.
Yeah. Well, I think that because when we first got married, we lived in Jersey, Troy just sort of defaulted to all the Jersey ways and did not really complain too much. But there were certain things we just couldn't replicate that he grew up with, like a pig butchering. Like he did that every year, and it doesn't really happen in New Jersey.
Shooting the turkey.
Yeah. I mean, it just doesn't, that's just hard to replicate. But I think what helped was we lived in Northern Ireland together with our two kids, and we had to make, new traditions together. And also we sort of acquired new traditions that they did in Northern Ireland as well. So like simple little things like, those Christmas crackers, those things you pull,
love
and
them.
the like a little toy will come out or something will come out. Like, those are like a non-negotiable at Christmas time in the UK. So like, even now that we live here in the States again, like I still always make sure there's a Christmas cracker, at the table setting or whatever. So certain little things like that, we were able to kind of like create new stuff together because we didn't have the influence of where we lived in terms of whether we were living by where he grew up or where I grew up influencing that. We had to kind of make our own way. So I think that was a really cool benefit of moving away from our family.
Yeah.
Far away was having to kind of create our own thing.
Love that.
And as you guys are talking, I do hear you talk about like why those things are important to you and why you want to pass them down. It's not just a matter of, oh, do we have a tradition? That represents so much. It represents like where we grew up, where we shared our summers, or where we vacationed, or where we felt comfort and peace and belonging, and then wanting our kids and even our grandkids to have that same thing. So it can be a very emotional topic when you're trying to figure out, okay, what makes the most sense? When I don't know how many years into my marriage, but my mother-in-law got tired of taking turns with us. And she was like, this is it. I'm having everybody over my house so that nobody has to choose. And that has really been how we've done holidays, birthdays, any kind of like get together has been both sides. And so when I say both sides, so my mother-in-law has two sons, my husband and my brother-in-law, and it's their, the wives, and then the wives' parents. So my parents come, their parents, like we just do everything together, which has been a real blessing because, we haven't had to choose, but it can be quite emotional when you
Yeah.
have to make decisions that don't make other people happy. And so we've kind of got off the hook the last couple of years, last maybe 10 years, where we've just done everything together, and it's been really nice.
I think that's an amazing solution. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, again, I've certainly, my Christmas, everybody is welcome.
Mm-hmm.
It is, God forbid, it is buffet style. And we do actually 2 distinct meals, because we do the meal of my childhood and then a meal that we created. But my sisters and I kind of put together. But I do think that is such a gift, Kimberly, that your mother-in-law gave to you, because that is absolutely something people struggle with, especially in their early marriage. Like, where do we go? How do we do this? My sisters definitely had that. They had to figure out every other year, and they still do that. So,
Yeah.
but I love the idea of everybody coming together if that's at all possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's tough if you live in different states
Oh,
in your
definitely.
family.
Yeah.
So I think that's always a tricky thing. I know for us, when we lived actually away from our family and lived in Northern Ireland, one decision that we made was that we'd always spend Christmas wherever we lived. So everything else was kind of up for grabs. And we actually sort of decided that we would just visit family in the summer, because it was the least burden on my children and their school and all that stuff. But we decided, you know, it doesn't matter where we live in terms of how close family is. We're just going to wake up on Christmas morning with, you know, where we normally live, because it just was it made the most sense for our kids at the time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So I just got to make a decision and go with it.
Yeah.
I was just reminded, as you were talking about the 2 different meals, Elise.
Mm-hmm.
One year we were going to a family member's house, and I knew that I was not going to be happy with the menu. And I knew it was going to be like, and when I mean buffet style for our family, you never sat at a table. It was very much like party buffet. Like you didn't even bring it to the table. It was everybody get a spot where they could find one. So it very much felt like a cocktail party and not a holiday. And going into that, I was like, oh, I can't believe we're going to do that again. And so what we ended up doing was we cooked a turkey and had a traditional, what for us or for me was a traditional Christmas meal on Christmas Eve with just the 5 of us. And that was a really, really special day, because typically we would never spend Christmas just the 5 of us. You know,
I love that. There's solutions to this stuff. If you just, I mean, it can feel like there aren't. Right. You know, it can be like, oh God, why do I have to live like this? This isn't what I grew up with. But then you figure it out, and you can come up with something better, which I think is lovely, that you have a Christmas Eve dinner and then Christmas with the bigger family. That's perfect, you know?
Yeah.
I think, though, you know, for me, my favorite traditions are the ones that I've come up with my own little tiny family. I think, you know, I mean, of course, I'm always going to be connected to what I've always done with my family, but I think it's the little ones that just kind of get birth out of being your own unique family. Those are my favorite ones.
Yeah. So tell us about some of those.
Well, in the summer, I think I've mentioned this before, but in the summer, we always host a Tuesday night barbecue for all of our neighbors. And so that's something we've been doing for 6 years. And my kids just know Tuesday nights is barbecue night. And so they even know like the whole system of how to prepare for it, what tablecloths need to come out, where the tables go. And we just love it. Like, that's just what we do in the summer. If we're not on vacation, we are barbecuing on Tuesday nights.
Love that.
So that's a fun one. And then also Christmas Eve, we host a huge brunch too for our neighborhood. And that's a big tradition that we've done. That tradition was something my mom started years. And I mean, I think I would have been like 9. She started doing that. And then I just kind of picked it up and opened it up to my neighborhood. And we also did that when we lived in Northern Ireland as well. So that's been a fun one that we've done. And I love that. Like, I love that my kids sort of, now they're kind of taking the lead in those traditions and have a say, and we'll make tweaks, and that kind of fun stuff is sort of fun to see and watch.
Yeah, I have a few too that aren't holiday related that are things that we've started as well. One of them is I do like a 13-year-old like birthday book. So I reach out to, for example, the girls, women who I feel have a place in my daughter's life, whether it's a youth leader, a coach, a neighbor, a family friend. And I ask them to write a letter to my daughter, basically. And then it was men for my son, basically to speak into their life, into that next phase of adulthood. And, whatever encouragement, whatever they want to write, they can do that. And so I've done that for all three of my kids, where I get all these letters and then I assemble them into sort of a scrapbook. And that's been really fun to do. It remains to be seen what it means to them, because they aren't like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
Right.
I've caught them looking at it. But I remember that my oldest, I gave it to her and she's like, is this my gift? Like, she was confused. She's like, are you getting me anything else? And so, but they know they're getting it, like, right. And after that first one, the second one was like, am I getting a book too? And the third one as well. We also do, and the reason why I started that was because I felt like I wanted them to hear voices besides me, telling them that they were amazing and wonderful and had value and worth. And I wanted other people to speak into their lives, because sometimes, kids they can't hear it if it comes from us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Even spouses, sometimes they can't hear it if it comes from us. And then it comes from somebody else and they're like, this is amazing. I'm like, yeah, I said that.
Yeah.
And so I thought that's a really good, that's one of the reasons why I did it. We also do a 16-year-old birthday trip. So when they turn 16, they get to do a one-on-one trip with mom or dad. Typically the girls went with me, and I'm sure my son will go with my husband, and they get to bring a friend. And our restrictions is that it can only be someplace that we can fly to with air miles, so it doesn't cost us a fortune. So we've done that, which has been really great. And holiday related, but also something that we've started, just the five of us, is doing a Passover Seder in addition to Easter, because my extended family does not celebrate Easter through the lens of Jesus and his resurrection. My parents do, but most of my other family members do not. And I wanted something that really represented our beliefs. And so we started doing a Christian Passover Seder, a handful of years ago. And that's been something that we look forward to. And every year we invite different people to join us in it.
That's cool. We do that. We do that as well. We have
Yeah.
a Seder every year.
Seder. Yeah.
What about you, Lise?
We don't. It's interesting. Of course, my children are much older than yours. I think that we are very intentional about, it's not really a tradition, but spending time together. And I'll give you, and making it sort of a well-planned and yet really fun, easy kind of thing to do. So for holidays, we're still doing a lot of the same traditions. Of course, COVID, I'm just thinking about the past 2 years.
Yeah.
It's been so different. It's been really just my kids, and there's been something wonderful about that. But I will admit, the first year I burst into tears. I can't remember whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, but it was like, I think it was Christmas, because Christmas is what I usually host. However, we just went to Coney Island for the day. My daughter Farrell pretty much planned the day, and it was for Father's Day. And I think there were the four of us, my two daughters who are not married, Farrell and Amelia, my husband, and myself. And it was just like this magical back in the day bubble experience. We started out by parking in a place that we all agreed on, hopped on the train, took the train out to Coney Island, and just had Nathan's hot dogs, went on some rides, not too crazy. They went on the Cyclone. I did not, which is like the oldest wooden roller coaster in the country, at least. And then we ended up in a fabulous Middle Eastern restaurant back in Brooklyn. And that to me is such an example of what we do together. It's like we play together. And we do love amusement parks. We like Hershey. We like Disney. We like the ones that are, lots of flowers and beautiful to be in, but our kids, again, adult children, they love the rides. So when we go to Hershey, Chris and I will go to the shows and watch the dolphins, whatever, go on a few of the rides, the little thing that hangs above the the ground and you're up in a little box, and
Right.
very simple things, or the swing, but they'll go on everything. And we just go back to the place of joy and innocence and simplicity and fun together. And so that is something that I'm really thankful to see continuing.
I think that our traditions reveal our values. I do. I mean, like your family definitely values spending time together.
Yeah.
Food, but like not just food, but like regional food.
Yes. We have favorites everywhere we go.
Yeah. I just think like if you pull back the traditions, or if you do like a deep dive and you look at the traditions and the ones that have stuck, you're going to go, okay, well, that's a value for us. Like
Yeah.
for our family, our neighbors are a huge value, right? So a lot of our stuff includes our neighbors,
So nice. Yes.
I don't know, just something that just popped to my mind as you're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that, and then sometimes we can always look at some of our values and say, are they showing up in our traditions, in our rites of passages, in our rituals? And if they're not, you can start to design something that will, point to those and reaffirm those. I know that life gets busy, very busy, and I'm not great at doing certain things on a regular basis. I never really could get the hang of doing devotionals with my kids every day. Like we just didn't do that.
Right.
But a lot of these traditions will point back, especially like the holiday traditions, the Passover Seder, they'll point us back to our faith in Christ. And we go to church every week too. It's not like we're devoid of our faith until
Right.
the holidays,
No. Mm-hmm.
but like bringing in these traditions that point back to our faith, or whatever it is that value is that you want to point towards, is important. If you see it missing maybe more regularly in your life, how can you point back to it in these traditions or in these things that you're trying to do every year?
I think it doesn't need to be cuckoo either. I think we can kind of get a little bit. You could definitely be like, oh, we need more traditions. What can we do? And it gets a little bit out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know for my side of the family, when there's a birthday, we go around the room and we just say one word that describes the birthday person. It's usually,
I like that.
It's a nice word, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not a whole speech. It's literally you're only allowed to say one
Love that
word. And the value in that is obviously encouragement and building each other up, but it's so simple. It's free, and it happens every birthday that we're together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not cuckoo. And I think we can get a little bit like Pinterest can take a great tradition and just exploit it because it makes you feel like you have to do this and this and this and this and
yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And it gets out of hand.
Yeah, I think so agree. And definitely there were many failed attempts. I think it's important to say that to those people who are listening and going, how come we're not doing those kinds of things? I will say there's a couple of simple things that we did because our faith life was extremely important, and church, yes, was part of it. But we had those little calendars, those little flip calendars, and that's how we kept morning devotions. Forget it. That was not happening. Everybody went to school at different times. But in the evening, when we sat down at the table, we just used the flip calendar, and it maybe just read a sentence or two. It was at the time, there were several different ones, but they were geared towards family. And then if we got involved in a conversation, we had a talking spoon. And if you were talking, you had the spoon. And when it was time for somebody, because everybody'd be talking over each other, we had 4 girls and the 2 of us. And so that was definitely a faith tradition. Also, whenever we got in the car, it was like captive audience. So we always did Devos together. And we went on a trip, 40 days and 40 nights across the country. And that was one of the most precious things for me, was being able to do that with my family every day. So that's what it took to be locked into a car in order for us to get those morning Devos going. But other than that, it was just a little something each day that we sat at the table, which wasn't every day. We tried to do that every day, but it was not every day. So you do the best you can,
Yeah. Oh, so that leads me to say, what about failed traditions? I have never been able to do Advent successfully.
Ever.
I mean, we've done, like, meaning that I started
Yeah.
And then we
I
just
know.
never get to, like, we always end at like day 15, or if
Who are the
we get
people
that
that
far.
actually do finish the Advent though.
There's so many books. Kimberly, I
don't think there-
remember
I try a
you
different
getting,
resource every year.
I remember
Yeah.
you sharing different Advent resources and kind of being like, okay, I'm going to try it. Okay.
There was
there's
one
so many
that-
beautiful ones.
There was one that, this is in the old podcast, but that somebody shared, and I opened it up and nearly had a panic attack because it was like 12 things you need to do that day.
I know which, I think
You
I
know
know
what I'm
which one you're
about?
talking about.
It
Yeah,
was
I do.
It was a gorgeous
Beautiful,
Advent,
but
but you open it and you're like, oh my gosh.
too much.
Maybe if you have
So-
had off the month of December, you could do it, but like.
Right. Instead, December's even busier. I will say one easy tradition for Advent is just, and again, we did this as a family with kids, the Advent wreath, because if we had the wreath, people were fighting each other to light the candles.
Yeah.
So that really helped us, and it sat in the middle of our kitchen table by the time the season was over. You could pick it up and the whole thing would fall off. Every needle. We have fake ones this year. In the past couple of years, don't tell my kids. But they had that at my church where you put together your Advent wreath. So it was really, that worked for a long time. And I think that's important. Some things you have to let go of as you go along. Like, okay, great, you did it for 20 years. I think in my family, true confession here, because we had so many traditions, there was a lot of pressure on my kids, not when they were young. They were great when they were young. But as they got older and felt they had to be everywhere and show up, I'm going to say for me, I've certainly heard about this from my, especially my oldest daughter. It's been too much. Like, it's kind of like they have to live their own lives too. So I think I don't know, that's not failed, but I would also say, Kimberly, things like writing in a journal all the time, that's been sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, so my kids are not big. I don't see anybody writing in journals. But it would have been a nice one to pass on, or those books where you keep all their important moments that some people do. So no, photo albums, love those kinds of traditions. Just, I'm really bad at that stuff.
Yeah.
You sort of bring up something though that just made me think, because I'm in this, like, I'm in a new season, similar to Kimberly, where like we're at the tail end of raising kids in school. So, kids going to high school and things like that.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that I feel like is important, and this is the time to start that, is creating traditions that are just with my husband, so that when everybody leaves,
good point. I'm gonna write that down.
Home, right?
That's important.
Home to like do the traditions. So like, I mean, one simple thing we've been doing, this is not, I would not have thought of it as a tradition, but now I'm going to officially on this podcast declare this as a tradition. But we go out to eat once a week for breakfast, because that works with our schedule. Our kids are too old. I mean, we could go out to eat at night. I mean, it's not for date night, and that's fine, but they're also at home, and sometimes we don't get that time where they go to bed and we hang out together. It doesn't happen, so we go out to breakfast because in the summer they're asleep or they're in school. So that's a tradition that we've been doing. And I'm thinking now, as you're talking, Elise, like, that's something that we can continue to do. That can be our thing. That doesn't include them. Like, tradition does not have to be with the whole fam. It can be with, your spouse, your partner, or it could be with your, daughter, or just son, or, traditions I do just, my sister or something like that. Those are just things I'm thinking about, because I wonder, like, what happens when everybody leaves? You feel like all your traditions
leave with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really good point. I remember as my kids were getting older, my father actually said something to me. He was like, you do everything with your kids, and you need to really think about what it's going to look like when the kids are grown. And I was like, what? I mean, it was real, but it was such a good word. And he really was concerned that, we did everything together. And so what did Chris and I have? And thank God he need not worry, because we really do have, Chris and I also enjoy a really good meal. So I'd say we go out at least once a week now, just the two of us, and we really enjoy one another. And we do have traditions of going away. We've gone to the Red Lion Inn in Massachusetts for our, first, fifth, 10th, 15th, 20th, 25th, 35th, 30th, 35th. And sometimes in between, it's just our special anniversary place. You know, we like taking walks together. We like riding our bikes together now. That happened since the pandemic. So yeah, I think that's really important to cultivate things, traditions that you enjoy together. You know, we're very connected. So that's the good news. But we do a lot together. And I think that's part of what makes a fun, happy marriage.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I definitely took note of that because I do feel like so those in between years of like being a child and having children, we didn't celebrate Easter. Like we didn't celebrate like it's not that it's a minor holiday, but you know what I mean? It's not overly commercialized. Yeah. And it like mainly has to do with the kids and the eggs and the hot. And I was like Easter was a day we would like go to the car show in the city. Like, you know what I mean? Like we stopped like as a couple, we just didn't do things that other people weren't hosting. And I can honestly say that we'll like when my kids leave or live other places, I probably would just be like, yeah, they're not here. I'm not doing it. Like to me, I can see myself falling into that trap for sure.
Yeah. And I'm just going to say, I have had just going to be honest here, many a pity party over these kinds of things, believe me. But then you have to just go, you know, what am I going to do about it? How am I going to, one of the things that I keep finding myself saying is, I want a joyful life. And how am I going to continue to have a joyful life with all the changes that happen throughout the course of your life? And a huge one is when your kids are gone and they're not necessarily coming back for all the traditions that you cherish. And, you know, hopefully at some point they won't be, because I have 2 more that aren't married and I'd love to see them married someday and, you know, having a family or whatever, but I don't want them not to go home for these precious things. But if that happens, it has to be okay. Again, I'm not saying I do this easily. I go kicking and screaming if I'm going to be honest, but it's important. Just as we're saying it's been important for us, it's important for them to establish what means the most to them. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Don't let my children hear this podcast.
Yeah, right. Well, you know, that brings me to sort of my next question. How do you know when to let go of a tradition? So we did birthday questions for a handful of years with our kids, and it was so fun, and I loved it. But I'm getting such pushback in the last year and a half that I'm like, you guys, like birthday dinners end up being like, fine, whatever. We'll just eat your favorite food, and we'll just. What else do you want to talk about? How was your day? Like this, like every other dinner that we have. See, I'm getting all worked up. And so like we have sort of attempted to do it, and when they give us pushback, we just let it go.
Good.
I feel like it's a little anticlimactic, but like, how do you know when to let it go? I mean, I could even shift it and tweak it, like Noelle said.
I was going to say, maybe try that.
So it's one word, but like, quite frankly, I don't need you to go to my birthday dinner if all you're going to do is talk about the same stuff we talked about yesterday. Like, it's not a birthday dinner.
Well, that's a good point. I think that's legitimate. What makes it special for you? Everybody gets to decide that about their birthday, don't they?
Yeah, but they don't have an opinion. Nobody has an opinion.
Well, do they have an opinion about what matters to them for their birthday is what I'm saying.
No.
Okay. Well, then.
So what do you want to do? Who do you want to have over? No one. I don't care. Whatever. Okay. Like they, you know, like I forced them to like pick their favorite meal. It's just, or we would go to a restaurant sometimes, but yeah. And I've struggled with making birthdays special to begin with. And so it's frustrating when when what has been actually working for so long isn't working anymore. And then not getting any input about, well, what do you want to see differently?
Well, you've got kids in that age. Remind us of the age of your children, Kimberly.
15, 17, and 19.
Yeah. I mean, that's tough. That's when they're straddling, you know, in the family and out of the family, and their peer group becomes more important to them. And it's not easy. And I would say it's also a season, you know, some of these things will even come back, but
that's what I was thinking. I wouldn't be surprised if, like, you know, they're 22, they bring home that special somebody for their birthday and they're like, oh, let's do birthday questions. And I'm going to be
Yeah.
like,
Okay, let me dig them out of the
You
attic.
had your chance.
Or
Birthday
yes,
questions are dead
we're
to
not
me.
going to do questions.
I know, right? No, that's not what we do anymore.
Yeah. It's so funny too, because I love those questions, Kimberly. I'm all about that kind of stuff. I had a packet of cards, I still do, called One Word. It's kind of based on the choosing your one word for the new year, but they're questions and they're good. They're good. They're good for gatherings. But if people don't want to do them, they become no fun at all.
Yeah.
And I think that is when you give up something. You know, as I said, sometimes I feel like I put too much pressure on my kids to keep these traditions going when they would be fine creating some of their own. That would be a good thing. But so I think that's a sign, you know, if people are feeling like it's a burden instead of a celebration, then we got to figure out something else.
Yeah.
What else?
So hold it with an open hand.
Yeah.
Another thing that we're running into is, or I'm running into personally, is that my dad did these games from scratch and these holiday games. He did them for all the holidays, even people's birthdays, and he passed away this year. And so, you know, quite frankly, I haven't had the ability to sort of take over that mantle. I mean, maybe I will next year, but our holidays have definitely seemed very anticlimactic, almost to the point of like, can we just get this over with? Like, you know, this is fun, but there's no like culminating in this sort of game that we all would do together. And so, yeah, like I'm wrestling with like, how do we carry on these traditions, you know, when the person that drove them are gone, and then, you know, do they fade away or do we pass the mantles to somebody else? And what does that look like? Have you guys had any experience with that?
One of the things that my father always did. So because my parents were divorced, we had busy holidays because we wanted to see both. But the way we worked it out, and again, this worked really well for my family, was Christmas Eve at my father's. And it was really a sacred event. We would read through the Christmas story. We would sing carols. And when I say sacred event, I'm always like, don't picture a bunch of people in the room with folded hands. I just mean, we were doing really something Christmassy about Jesus. And it was beautiful and amazing. Dinner was simple: soup and sloppy Joe sandwiches, the New Jersey kind, with the turkey and Swiss and coleslaw, not the red meat kind.
I just heard about those recently, by the way, like 2 months ago. I had no idea that New Jersey sloppy Joe was not a real sloppy Joe.
Right. Noelle, have you had those?
I live in a divided home where one parent called sloppy joes the red meat and the other one the sandwiches, and it was a point of contention my entire childhood. So
well, I love the meat ones. Those are great for like family with the burger bun and all that. We did that as a family, but these are like, there's
they're like subs almost.
Yeah, but they're thin rye bread, and they're very big. South Orange is where they were created, at the Town Hall Deli, if you want the best ones, anybody. And they were started with things like tongue, and you know, you can get all kinds of variations. We have some funny Christmas stories about that. But anyway, we have kept up that food tradition. My husband, I mean, not my husband, but my father and stepmother both passed. So we aren't going one place where we do this beautiful tradition anymore. And frankly, I miss it. We sort of had a little bit of an attempt over the pandemic. We still got the food, but because I'm hosting Christmas the next day, it's a little
right.
too much for me to organize. But again, so what would I say? We're trying to hold on to that beautiful tradition. The pandemic has messed with it. We'll see what happens next year. One of my sisters very well could say, I'll host it and we'll all do it again. I hope so, because I don't care who comes. For me personally, it's a very beautiful, holy night.
I am thinking this through. We lost Troy's mom this year, and a lot of the traditions were based around food. A lot of it was baking stuff. So luckily, my son is an avid baker, and he's really taken up the mantle of baking through her recipes for different things.
Yes.
But there was one thing I was just thinking about. I was very, very close to my grandfather, my pop-up. And when he passed, there were certain things I feel like over time have gotten lost. Like Easter was a big thing, and he would do this crazy Easter egg hunt, and there were prizes, and there were like these academic questions that we could win money if we answered right. I mean, it was a whole, I loved Easter. And so we don't do that because he's gone, and we all realized how much work it is, and we're like, oh, okay. So and my kids are now the age where they don't want to be looking for Easter eggs. You know what I mean?
No.
Well, I mean,
I'm
it's
kidding.
just weird when it's like just the two of them looking around. You know what I mean? Like everyone's following them around with the camera. It's like weird. So
Unless there's like $100 bills in the eggs.
yeah,
Then
like they're just
they're
kind
all
of
for
like,
it.
just give me my body wash. That's
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
even have to put it in the basket. Just give it to me. Or actually just give me the money and I'll go buy what I want. So
Yeah.
I think that some of this will get resurrected. I'm hoping when my siblings, no pressure if you're listening, have their own children, they're young again. It's just not the same feeling. And so like, you know, when as an example, like there's a part in a Seder where as a little kid, you go look for the
Afikomen.
matzah. Is that what it is? The matzah thingy?
Afikomen, yeah.
Okay. I don't know the fancy word for it, but you go look for it and you get some money. Like when my nephew was in town for it, you know, it's way more fun when he at age, you know, whatever age he was, he can't even talk, but he can barely walk. You know, we're literally like putting it in his hand. So much more enjoyable than when my 15-year-old's looking for it. And he is like, how much do I get? Like, I just think there's certain things like that I think children have this beautiful way of resurrecting those traditions again.
True.
So I'm hoping.
But you know, I think what we're really kind of saying is there are certain traditions that are really for younger kids, and I know I have tried to hold on to them, but for example, an Easter egg hunt is fun with my grandchildren, but even them for probably not that much longer, because you know, but still it is. And yeah, so I think we need to let go, and if we really treasure something, keep it in mind for what's coming. But I also think, Noelle, you made such a good point. Now, your grandfather probably didn't find it to be work. He probably loved doing that. And the same, Kimberly, with your dad. He loved that game. I remember that. And so, you know, that's part of it. The person is doing something that brings them great joy. And so it spills out onto everybody. So when we're like bumming out because we have to do whatever it is, I think we need to think about something else, you know. Yeah. I don't know, Kimberly, I know you've done the games though yourself.
Oh, and for me, it's not so much of like not doing the work. Like I feel like for us to do it is just a natural extension of what we've already done. Like we've, you know, my son has created games for some of the holidays, even when my dad was alive, just because he was like, inspired. This is what we do, you know, and in so many ways, that is what me and the five of us do is we play games. We've made up our own games. I think for me this year, it was just the emotion was too hard for me to come up with the games on my own. So it was more for me, not about the work. I foresee us in the future doing it, but I do think there's going to be a time when I'm going to have to be like, I need to do this no matter how I feel about it, because I don't want it to get lost. And I'll have to balance the two. So like I will have to be intentional to bring it back, but I feel like once it's back, it's not going to be a hard thing to maintain.
Right.
Well, I think again, your question being, when do you not do traditions or let them go or whatever? Yeah, when we've lost somebody who was completely aligned, or how we think of that tradition with that person, that's part of a grieving process. And you know, it's kind of like there's a hole there and you're experiencing that. And, you know, again, I think Christmas Eve has been, we've tried to replicate it, but it has not been the same since my father passed. And that was a long time ago. That was over 10 years ago. So it's just that he brought that joy and energy to it in a way that was, you know, he put together booklets, and it just was very kind of like what we're all talking about.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's grief on the end of whether it's the loss of our older generation or the moving on of our younger generation. Like, I think there's an ebb and flow that happens with traditions. And Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
just part of, and I hope that our children and we ourselves can appreciate the traditions when we're in the midst of them, realizing that they may not always be this way.
Yeah.
Like we go every weekend to 4th of July weekend to my best friend's house in Rhode Island. And like my two kids, they're sort of trying to get out of it this year because they have a graduation party. I'm like, you are not going to know this person a year from now, 2 years from now, but we
Right.
will still know this family 10 years from now. I mean, we've known them. I've known her since college. I mean, like, let's really think about what's more important. We're not going to change this for something that's, quick fix now. We're not going to change our traditions. And so I think even this idea of protecting them and honoring them and guarding them, I think is important too. Like when is it worth it to say, hey, you might miss something, but this is something that we always do. And, quite frankly, that's not something I'm willing to let go of or budge on because, let's be realistic. Like you're 16, you're not going to know this person, but you've known my friend all your life.
You want people to be realistic at 16?
That's not very realistic. That's not very realistic.
So what kind of a response did you get to that?
I mean, there's still pushback. They're still trying to be like, we'll take the train up. I'm like, you're not spending the day by yourself sleeping over, then catching a train. Like you're 15 and 17. You're not catching a train. Like you could catch the train to New York City, but no, like this isn't working. And then there's all sorts of things they're trying to do. But I really did have to empathize with them and say, hey, look, I know this is tough. I know this is difficult. I suffer from fear of missing out all the time, but we are saying a bigger yes, saying no to one thing is a yes to a bigger and better something else. I truly believe. And so we're sticking with it, and we'll stick with it as long as we can.
It's a family weekend. So it's kind of like the all or nothing. That's what we do. And I think that's okay too.
Yeah.
Especially at that age.
Yeah. All right. So any last thoughts? I do want to say, I wrote down how to keep family traditions going or how to even start them. Just a couple of quick pointers before we wrap up. So get input from your whole family. Like I like, Elise, how you were talking about like, what do your kids want to do for their birthdays? And, there is a time when we need to ask them, our kids, their opinion, our family members, their opinion, because we want them to show up as active and joyful participants, right, of what we're doing.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer in scheduling it, putting it on the calendar, keep it simple. We talked about that too in this episode. If it's too much, Noelle, you mentioned if it's too much to do, it doesn't have to be Pinterest worthy, right. And be flexible. So some of those are some takeaways
those are good
that we can keep in mind as we're thinking about traditions. Any last thoughts?
I think really, like with so many other things, you really, I'm thinking of that song, you have to make your own music. You have to figure out what works for your family. No Pinterest, social media, whatever. What do you really care about? What do you really want? I love bringing in the family for the consensus. I also think, start them young. If you're in that, if you are young and your children are young, think about that as a couple, what you want to see your children doing, and what you want to celebrate. I think then it becomes easier rather than starting somewhere in the middle. But I also say start anytime. Come up with something that you all want to do together and enjoy it.
I love it.
Any last thoughts?
I have nothing to add other than just make room for new ones,
Yeah.
Don't get too religious about your tradition.
Seriously, I agree.
Yeah. All right, ladies. Well, thank you for being with us today and talking to us about family traditions.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.